Hey everybody, and welcome to the Keeping It Real Estate Podcast. I'm Allie Vasquez, the team leader of the Vasquez team of Karis Realty Group. We are based out of the Old Line State. Do you know where that is? If you don't, you should. It is Maryland, my Maryland. Right now, there is a lot going on in the market, nationally, statewide, every sort of hyper-local market, and I think it's really important that we get the right kind of information out there. You know, things shift and people say it's a crash. Things shift and they say it's a bubble. We really have to look at things on a wider, more, bird's eye view type of scale. And that's why I'm here. I really know a lot about the market. I used to be a teacher. I'm really good at explaining things. So let's jump into what's going on right now. I'm also not trying to keep you here for like 20 minutes. There is nothing that we need to talk about for that long. The goal here is to just start the conversation. So you can always hit me up on any form of social media at allie.vasquez.team on Instagram, Allie Vasquez Maryland Realtor on Facebook. And you can always just text me 240-529-5021. Use those digits wisely. So let's talk about a phrase that I've seen going around with a lot of realtors right now, and that is marry the house, date the rate. What does that actually mean? Marry the house, date the rate. Well, interest rates are going up. Let's not over dramatize things. Interest rates are going up to what historically are normal levels, 4s, 5s, 6s. That's normal. A lot of Gen Z millennial people have been really spoiled by the 3s and even at one point the 2s during COVID. That was really our economy being in a crisis and them driving the rates so far down just so that somebody would go out there and buy. Now, did they anticipate that with COVID and these very low interest rates that everybody would be sick of living at home and they would go out in droves, and yet sellers had nowhere to go? They didn't want to show their houses during COVID and we would have this insane inventory crisis for 2 years? No, nobody knew what was coming. But I mean, come on, all of us during COVID, weren't we like, oh yeah, we'll be out of this in 3 weeks? Haha, you thought. That definitely was not the case. So now we are definitely seeing the return to normal interest rates. So what does that mean for our little saying, marry the house, date the rate? Does that mean that I am not going to go search for homes because interest rates are at 6%? That's really not realistic. We don't know when interest rates will go back down. If they will go back down, they might go up. People buy homes in all kinds of markets. They buy homes when the interest rates are at 11%. If you know anybody that was alive and out there house hunting during the 70s, they'll tell you horror stories of 11, 15, 16% interest rates. The thing about real estate and the thing about homes is that it's part of our lives. So as long as your life is changing, you don't really get to dictate whether you're buying or selling. You just have to go with wherever life takes you. So that's why we are marrying the home. When we are ready personally to purchase a home, we are going to go out there with reckless abandon and we are going to find the one and we are going to buy that house. Me personally, I've been renting the past 2 years. Shh, don't tell anybody. That's like a dirty secret. I have been renting the past 2 years. I am going to be purchasing a home in the next year or two with these interest rates. I will never get married again, but I will be marrying a home at some point. Why? Because this is the time in my life where I need a home. My children need that stability. I want to set a place for them to be able to really, grow up, live and thrive and feel like they're part of a community. And I'm going to make that commitment. Why does it not trip me out? Because the interest rates are always going to fluctuate. And just because you are locked into that interest rate doesn't mean that you can't make a change in the future. Unlike a real marriage, unless you're doing an open thing, shout out Will and Jada Smith, buying a home is kind of like being in a somewhat open relationship. Yes, you are locked down with that interest rate, but you can feel free to, when interest rates go down a little bit, when something else looks a little more attractive, it is perfectly okay to go astray and lock in at that interest rate. Oh my gosh, how many marriages would be saved if this were actually how it worked in the real world? Marry the house, date the rate. You can get the best of both worlds. We have our off-camera assistant, Allison, here, and Allison is 17 years old?
Yes.
17 years old. Why are we talking to a 17-year-old about purchasing a home? And the answer is because after me being a high school teacher for 10 years, I realized that adults and kids have the exact same question. Adults might have a little bit more life experience, but that doesn't always necessarily translate to them being smarter. Trust me. So I like to hear a perspective of somebody who doesn't know anything, because a lot of millennials that have not necessarily jumped into the home purchasing, arena have the exact same questions as somebody who is 17 years old. I definitely find it refreshing to hear their perspective because they're still in these classes that a lot of us have shelved this information away and don't remember it until we're out in the real world. Allison, what are some of your questions about marrying the house, dating the rate, and anything that we've talked about with interest rates today?
Sure. So how do interest rates fluctuate?
Ooh, really good question. So a lot of adults will probably think, oh, who knows? Like somebody just, comes from above. And it really has to do with the Federal Reserve. Generally, you'll see that when there's a little bit of economic stress or turmoil, that they will lower the interest rate so that, people feel a little bit freer to buy. So when you see interest rates go down, that means that people might be feeling strapped in other areas of their own personal economies. And so the Fed decided that they are going to lower the interest rate. Like this past summer, the interest rates went up almost a full percent and people were completely losing their minds. But guess what? Last week they went down like 0.5% again. So really it is anybody's game out there. People get all caught up in it and there's nothing that we can do to predict it. So just embrace that we have no idea what's going on sort of idea.
How soon can I refinance?
Ooh, good question. So when I'm saying marry the house and date the rate, and then we can always lock in, locking in is when you take your whole loan and you lower it. So basically, instead of the interest rate that you started with, you are taking your loan and you are lowering the interest rate when it gets there and you are kind of starting all over again. But don't let that really concern you because, we're all locked into this mortgage together. 30 years of debt, what's another 2 to 5 years, right? So how soon can you refinance? The best answer to that is that you can refinance within 6 months of purchasing a home. Maryland Mortgage Program offers some really great programs. For example, the Maryland Mortgage Program offers some really great programs. Unfortunately, some of their rates are even like 1% to 2% higher than what's going on in the market right now. And people will be like, oh, I don't want to do that. But you can refinance in 6 more months. And all economic indicators have been pointing to the fact that home prices are still going to be going up no matter what happens with interest rates. We are going to maybe see an increase in interest rates. We are going to see an increase in inventory, but we aren't going to see a depreciation in home values. So you can refinance in 6 months. You can refinance in a year. You can refinance whenever it is convenient to you. And the refinancing is kind of that date. And then maybe think of it as like a vow renewal, right? You're like, oh no, just kidding. I mean, even though I like this interest rate, I still love this house. And I am just going to take this commitment and I'm going to restructure it, but I'm still all about you, baby, all about this house. In conclusion, we are still going to be out there in full force searching for homes. Why? Because now, even though the interest rates are slightly higher, we know that there's more inventory. People were always worried about overpaying. Your sales price, you're not going to be overpaying anymore, as we potentially could have been doing during the COVID home searching years. We are going to be out there. We are going to be committing to a home. We are going to be flexible on our interest rate, and we're going to find the one. I mean, you are, not me. I will, but we're not talking about men here. We're talking real estate. If you know me, you know I'm always keeping it real, and we can't wait to see you next time on the Keeping It Real Estate podcast.